Hello and welcome to These Are the Days of our podcast. I'm Jen.
And I'm Lisa, and today we are, regrettably, very reluctantly, celebrating Play a Recorder Month, which is celebrated in the month of March.
La 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 So we agree on most things, Lisa, but there is nothing like a small plastic tube to bring out the most aggressively opposed opinions. I do think that the recorder itself is the most divisive instrument in history. I find it deeply nostalgic, but Lisa, can you tell me what your thoughts are on the recorder?
I can't believe you like the recorder. I'm just so in shock that you could like. Okay, first of all, does it not just bring back elementary school? And like, I think it's like grade four. You like learned, or maybe like, I'm trying to think of what the.
I started in grade 4.
Yeah, I was like, it might have been grade two. I don't know, but it's just I just remember everyone playing. How teachers didn't die in that classroom from 30 children playing the recorder all at once. It's just I get that they want to have a musical education and this is the cheapest option, but man, it sounds atrocious. Ugh, it's just so unfun.
I can't really argue with that because there is like quite a pain point in learning the recorder. But I think because I've always been a music nerd, I've always loved any chance to learn music things and actually really loved and was quite good. Not to toot my own recorder horn, but I feel like I was a little bit of a virtuoso in fourth grade on the recorder. So probably that contributed to my pleasant feelings about the recorder. But I think I got some recorder skills.
Wow, good for you. Good for you.
And this unfortunately did not end in fourth grade for me. So I think that most people, when they go to university, they take this as an opportunity to reinvent yourself. So in our case, we actually left our countries, left our continents, and had the opportunity to just make our own identities again. And I immediately decided that the way I was going to become cool and fun in university was to join a medieval recorder choir.
At the castle, you did that?
Yeah. So I don't remember when it started or when it ended, but there's just this brief moment in time in the first semester of university that I would go to a room in the castle and there'd be a small group of us playing in 4-part harmony, like medieval madrigals and other English folk songs. It was a really strange time. And I
Wait,
don't
were
know
we friends at the castle? Were we actually friends? I
who are
question
you.
this now.
I think at some point I realized that I could just go to the pub instead. And then I think that started my descent into drinking a lot in first year and having a more normal university experience. But for a period of months, I spent a lot of time in 4-part harmony on an alto recorder.
Very exciting. I mean,
So
very exciting.
so that's a fact about me. But so I think we're going to talk a little bit about the recorder in history. And so the recorder actually has a very illustrious place in music history because it's been used for centuries. And we still have existing recorders from the Middle Ages, and it was a really popular instrument in the Renaissance and Baroque periods. So I think that when people think of the recorder, they don't think, oh, yes, there's a place in the symphony for the recorder.
Shocking. Just shocking.
But I think that you might be surprised to know that a lot of notable composers like Handel, Vivaldi, Bach, Monteverdi, Purcell, Telemann, they all wrote for the recorder, which I think is quite interesting. And actually, the recorder also is mentioned in 15th century literature. So they talk about in John Lygate's something that he wrote, talk about little shepherds fluting all day long on small recorders on flutes. Although I think John Milton might have agreed with your assessment of recorders as being terrible, because he said in Paradise Lost that the fallen angels in hell moved to the Dorian mood of soft recorders. So I feel like John Milton might be on your side of the recorder debate.
Thanks, John.
And then one more fun fact about recorders in history is that Henry VIII was a very avid recorder fan. And at his death, apparently he had 76 recorders in his personal belongings. So, in addition to marrying a lot of people, he also loved to play the recorder.
Apparently, or have it played for him. A good rendition of hot cross buns.
He did actually import an entire family of recorder players from Italy at one point to England so that they could just, amuse him as he went about his days. So that's the thing you could do if you were King Henry VIII.
If you're a terrible person, also just listen to the recorder.
The recorder did fall out of favor in the Romantic and Classical periods, but it has had a bit of a resurgence after that. And there are new composers that are actually composing for the recorder. So I think that's interesting. And also, there are professional recorder players. So people don't just stop playing the recorder after the 4th grade and they start other instruments. There's actually people that are professional.
Or the first year of university.
Or then it's an option. But I would argue that the recorder has some cultural significance as well. And maybe art history Lisa can tell us a little bit about some of the art moments that the recorder featured in.
Yeah, so from my research, many of these instruments were originally from the Middle East, and once trade routes were established, say medieval times before then, were important into Europe. But I am just looking only at Western art, and of course there's not art periods of art, like everything is not completely linear, but we kind of see the emergence of recorders in paintings or frescoes in the medieval period, moving into the Renaissance. And I think a lot about the Renaissance being they're philosophers and scientists, and the artist was more than just a painter or sculptor. And so I found this apparently ancient philosophical concept called, literally translates to universal music. It's a concept that the proportions of movement of the celestial bodies, so the moon, the sun, and the planets, are a form of music. And so people used to believe that the universe was actually one huge musical instrument. And this music wasn't audible, but rather like a religious experience. And so then when you look
I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah, and so when you look at these art or frescoes or paintings, you see the angels or celestial beings always are the ones who have the musical instruments. Personally, it would be for me, it would be a painting of Dante's First Circle of Hell, but so the recorder, kind of the very what they think the first fresco with the recorder is called the Mocking of Jesus, and it's probably around 1315. And it's might be the first time it's ever appeared. As is before the 14th century, there was a number of illustrations of ambiguous pipes that may or not have been the duct flute, which would be considered a recorder. So it's kind of, like everything in history, it's kind of unknown, but they think that this one, it's in Macedonia. And and that it's actually a recording of a theatrical performance. And then another famous one is the Our Lady of the Angels. So it's again depicting the Virgin and Child surrounded by these angels playing musical instruments.
So what you're saying is that the recorder is voices of the angels. It's celestial
No,
in
I said
connotation.
incorrect. I said musical instruments with the idea of this universal music, celestial music philosophy. But no, I will repeat again. I said the first circle of hell because that's limbo, in for Dante, and I would be like, it would be limbo. It'd be like hold music, like listening to a recorder on hold music.
Mm.
Say this notable example because it does then appear in further paintings. Not that common. It kind of after the medieval Renaissance period falls a little bit out of style, but I did find one that Judith Hans Lester. She was so female artist, which is really cool. Painted a boy playing the flute in 1635, and there's actually a recorder in the background. And she was like a Dutch Golden Age Baroque painter who painted the very famous like genre paintings, and still lifes. And so her work at the time was really highly regarded, but then she was like completely forgotten about after her death until about like the mid 20th century. So that's like really cool. And yeah, so I was like, that's cool if females, you rarely see female artists from so long ago. And then I did want to say something about how if you want to know the difference between some, like if you're looking at a painting and you see a recorder and you're like, huh, but is this like medieval or is it Baroque? The on TikTok there's an art history, I'd say lecturer. She makes art history content. It's underscore the iconoclast. She says, "How to impress friends at an art gallery. Are there cute babies in the picture? That's Baroque. If it's got ugly babies, that's medieval." So if you see an ugly baby in a recorder, you're like, medieval. Got
I,
it.
I love that. That is like such a good hack. Just going to impress so many people at art galleries from now on. But I also wanted to bring up this point. So all of the art that you're talking about has recorders in association with these like quite celestial beings, or 'cause sometimes it's used in pastoral scenes like shepherds and shepherdesses. It kind of has this like very lovely connotations. But there's actually some people in the 15th and 16th centuries that talked about the recorder actually being very lewd, and it had like quite a crude and crass reputation. And Castiglione, Cortegiano in 1528 said that recorders should only be used in private, especially not in the presence of women, because without tact and good judgment, it's impossible to imagine all of the things that could happen. So there is actually this like quite lewd a connotations for the recorder, which is quite hilarious. And there's an rather explicit shepherdess painting from the 1500s as well that depicts the recorder in quite a questionable scenario. And one final thing to add to this was that there was this joke in the 17th century that every English gentleman had one in his pocket. And that would be greeted with like guffaws. But it kind of linked to, there was this movement of table music, or where music was becoming more accessible and more people were able to play music and own musical instruments. And so the recorder has always been quite an accessible instrument, but also paired with this rather lascivious reputation, it kind of creates this really interesting reputation for the recorder. So it's either of the angels,
Who
or
knew? Who
it's like
knew?
not to be used in the presence of women, because who knows what could happen. Recorders.
Amazing.
But to talk a little bit more about music education and the role of the recorder. So kind of from that basis of music becoming a little bit more accessible and people starting to um, learn music themselves, recorders were recognized in 1600s as being very useful and a pleasant companion for musical education. And then there was this, but why did we start to play the recorder in every elementary school? It actually goes back to a German music educator in the mid 20th century named Karl Orff. Orff. And there's the Orff
Mm.
Schulwerk
Orff?
method, which really popularized the recorder in school. So it's kind of like the 1940s. And so there's this really great article in I think it was in The Guardian, and it says, "Pity that poor recorder, tortured in thousands of classrooms by reluctant school children. It's still the most popular instrument used in schools, but is there any sound more dispiriting than that of a chipped recorder playing en masse out of tune?" And they're saying that there's quite an indignity in the classroom when you just toss the recorders with no respect and no regard into the cupboard where they just, lay for weeks on end. So I actually think that the recorder is interesting because probably millions of people start the recorder, but there must be only several thousand professional recorder artists. So I think that the drop off of like people starting to actually becoming a professional recorder player is probably the steepest of any instrument.
Yeah, and I do pity the people who, or children, if that's your introduction into musical instruments, like you're not ever going to move past the recorder. Like, how many people could be like, what if I mean, I understand the cost and size of, say, a guitar or the piano, but, man, why the recorder? Why the recorder?
And the learning curve of a recorder is actually really steep. Like they're really accessible. It really is just a tube of plastic with holes drilled into it. And so you can understand why they've become so popular, and they're really easy to make a sound at first, but to make a good sound is actually really quite difficult. So there's kind of this like everyone can make a noise on a recorder, but very few people can make a recorder sound okay.
Yeah. Oh God, are you gonna play hot cross buns?
Oh, I so am. So, in honor of this episode, as soon as we decided to do this episode, I was so excited because it gives me an excuse to order a recorder. So, I've bought this beautiful translucent pink recorder from Yamaha. And I have been requested to give you a rendition of the song Hot Cross Buns.
Specifically for Tori.
I just did that to remind you of why you loved it.
That was, I actually just muted you. I just turned the sound off.
You're the worst.
Just didn't want to listen to it.
It does have the ability to transport you immediately back to the classroom. Like I feel like it can smell chalk right now, and just the like weird desk that was a little bit sticky and had people's carvings for the last 15 years in it.
It is funny that the recorder, I mean, it's everyone remembers it from their childhood, but there's actually so many songs that use the recorder that you wouldn't think about. So I looked some up, and these are some artists who actually had the recorder in their songs. It was like Lou Reed, Jefferson Airplane, The Beatles, The Rolling Stones, and then really famously, probably the most popular guitar riff that to also features a recording right at the beginning. This guitar riff, which is banned in guitar shops all around the world, according to Wayne's World. But Stairway of Heaven, at the very beginning, before it goes into the first line, there's a lady who's sure that all that glitters is gold, has 4 recorders playing.
That's amazing. See, recorders are the greatest. So versatile. And everyone who loves that song loves the recorder in some small way, I think.
Apparently.
You got it.
Apparently.
I do remember that coming on in the Stairway to Heaven coming on during prom, and it was like the worst thing because it's such a long song, and then you're either awkwardly standing around for 7 minutes or you're trying to dance to a really difficult song to dance to because it's kind of up tempo and down tempo.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure ever since that was released, it is the song that ends every high school dance. Always. But hopefully now even, although kids don't go to school anymore, apparently. They just stay at home.
Yeah, and you definitely can't dance. There's got to be some sort of COVID innovation of like a between dancers shield.
When you just put your
space for the Holy Spirit, as they would have said when I was growing up. You got to leave the space for the Holy Spirit. Or COVID.
Or COVID. One or the other.
I did want to tell you the other name so the recorder is part of the flute family, and you've mentioned the duct flute, but it's also called the fipple flute, and I would like to think that we should start calling it the fipple flute because I find that
I agree.
very funny.
I agree.
Yeah. Building on what you were saying, though, I think that there's obviously a place for the recorder in classical music, and there are some notable virtuosos like Dorothy Orbelinger, who is a German virtuoso.
Whoa.
And then there are these really famous rock songs that have recorder in it. So my question to you, do you think there is a chance for the recorder? Do you think it can find its way back to dignity and glory? Or do you think that it is now just destined to be the bane of every elementary school teacher's existence and just bring back elementary school traumas?
I don't know when was it ever a glorified instrument? In its like
peak... In the Middle Ages, we talked about it. That was peak recorder.
Peak recorder.
In Baroque period?
No, I feel
peak recorder. Yeah.
I do feel like it's always going to be that thing that people, well, minus you, dislike and don't like, and then it subtly is in so much music. I feel like it's going to have this like undercurrent always. So you're always reliving your 4th grade experience. So I don't think it'll ever come back into that mass popularity, but it will never leave us. And it will just be this undercurrent and be like, oh, but I like that song. You're like, but it has a recorder in it.
Fun fact, I just have a image of me just popping up into conversations. Oh, did you know there's a recorder in that? So I think what you're saying is that foremost, no one will ever think that this is the vehicle of musical bliss, but there is something like charmingly simple about the recorder. Is there anything that you want to say on the topic of playing a recorder before we talk about other things in March?
No.
Okay, fair.
No, I don't.
I do think that I should issue a public apology to my flatmate Emma because I now have a recorder and I'm sorry. And I love it.
Poor Emma.
Okay, so we're recording this, let's say roughly March 8th to the 11th. We'll release this. So some famous birthdays at this time. We have William V, Prince of Orange, who I actually don't know a lot about. Dutch, yeah. But I don't know that much about except for he's the reason that we have orange carrots. So and the reason why all the other carrots kind of fell out of popularity, because there's like actually like purple carrots and green carrots, and he's the reason we have orange carrots. Then we have Otto Hahn, born March 8th, and he's the father of nuclear chemistry. Woo!
Woo!
And he studied at both UCL and McGill, Canada and the UK.
And my school.
Yeah. Next one, teenage heartthrob, Freddie Prinze Jr.
No way! So dreamy!
Yeah,
So
that is
dreamy.
literally only for you. Then we have, I wanted to do equal parts men and women, but so I found on March 9th, her birthday is Friederike Caroline Neuber, who was a German actress in the 1600s. One of the most famous actresses and managers in the history of German theater. Interesting.
Definitely still a household name that no one's ever heard of.
Yeah. Another actress, Juliette Binoche. She's the French actress. She was in The Unbearable Lightness of Being and The English Patient and Chocolat.
Okay.
You know her.
Famous movies.
And then lastly is the only Canadian female prime minister, Kim Campbell, born on March 10th. Yay!
Her glorious 3-month period of running Canada.
Yeah.
So I hope that I've convinced some of you to dust off your old recorders and celebrate Play a Recorder Month. But if that's not exactly the thing that you're most keen to do, there are a few other ways that you can celebrate this period in March. So March 9th is actually the day equal distant from Valentine's Day and April Fool's Day. And it's called Get Over It Day. And so today you're supposed to get over the things that you didn't get, whether it's that cute boyfriend or the job. So just get over it today on March the 9th. March the 10th is also Mario Day. It's a Mario. So it's because the first 3 letters of March, M-A-R, and then 10 spells Mario. And I think initially it was to celebrate all people named Mario, but it's very quickly become a Nintendo holiday for the famous plumber.
Who you would be Mario because he's very exuberant, but Luigi is better. He can jump higher.
Lisa has just got a console and I did not. I was too busy playing the recorder to really learn how to play video games as a child. So now as a 34-year-old adult, I'm trying to learn how to play video games. And so I need to spend more time with Mario. That is a goal for me in my life right now.
That's a goal. Yeah. Exactly.
So, final thing to celebrate, coincidentally, or perhaps not, March 11th is World Plumbing Day. So I feel like it's also Mario Day, where you can celebrate the most famous Italian plumber, or also just the existence of plumbing, which is something that I'm very thankful for.
Which is, I'm into.
A big
deal.
Really
into.
Yeah. So that's it. I don't think there's anything else to say, but go play your recorder this month and tune in next time for maybe or don't. I do want to give you a quick trigger warning because I've recorded another version of the outro song. Just it might bring up true memories of elementary school. So if that's not something you're comfortable confronting today, you should turn off the podcast now.
Okay, goodbye.
Okay, bye.